p.m. special board education meeting to discuss the fall school reopening. Before we jump into that, have a call to order. Ms. Jasinski, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Corpo.
Here.
Ms. Hallen.
Here.
Ms. Ham.
Here.
Ms. Harrigan.
Here.
Mr. Martelli.
Here.
Mr. Perugini.
Here.
Mr. White. I can see him.
I see him.
Yes.
Is my video? No, my video's on.
You're good.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I ask that we stand for the pledge, and Superintendent Solon is going to throw up our favorite flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
And to the
States
republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all. We almost had a concerted effort there. We got to. I'll save my commentary for later. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Again, this is a special board education meeting, most likely one of several, to discuss the much anticipated and much debated topic of our Cheshire Public Schools reopening for fall. We have pretty much that only thing on the agenda item. We do have a correspondence and an audience item. The audience item are essentially all of the emails that we've received through the COVID-19 mail address, which Superintendent Solon and his team will address throughout the course of the presentation. I want to remind folks that you are free to send emails to that address, which I should know off the top of my head by now. But before we move on, I'll say it one more time, the address. But throughout the course of the meeting, please send emails, especially if you hear things on reopening, you want further clarification, because we can also address those toward the end of the meeting. So keep those coming in. And Jeff, I apologize, I should know this. What is the email address one more time?
CPS COVID-19 at cheshire.k12.ct.us.
Thanks. And again, it's on our meeting agenda. So move on to correspondence. Miss Hallen, do we have any correspondence?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. The first is a letter from Teresa Commune. I do not have her address. And it reads as follows: to whom it may concern, I am writing in support of Tony Perugini. I did not read the offensive social media post, quote unquote, firsthand, so I cannot defend his post specifically. What I can support is the way Mr. Perugini has conducted himself over the last several years on the BOE. To this point, I have observed Mr. Perugini to be kind, respectful, and professional in his public and social media dealings. Personally, I've noticed and appreciated the increased transparency and ease of communication between parents and BOE members since he has served. Of note, I have never seen him behave in a politically divisive manner. Rather, he has always seemed above that, listening to all sides. He's always seemed more than fair to me. She goes on to say she doesn't agree with those who have called for Mr. Perugini to recuse himself on this issue of school reopening. On a personal note, it is easy to find questionable and offensive social media posts made by male. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to go into that. Let's see. I applaud Ms. Harrigan's suggestion to look at social media posts by BOE members going forward, and I also think it would benefit all of us to be more adult and tolerant of each other, particularly when someone with an otherwise stellar performance may have made a mistake. Again, that was from Teresa Commune. The next letter is actually kind of, I don't quite understand what this has to do with the Board of Education issue, but it is a letter that was submitted to us by the Republican Town Committee Executive Board, and it reads as follows: Cheshire Board of Education, there's a huge amount of anger in our nation right now. Cheshire is no exception. Like everywhere in America, this anger is destructive and has gotten out of hand. The incident in Cheshire I'm referring to involves our town council chairman, a dedicated and hardworking elected official and deeply caring parent. Whatever you may think about his policy positions, and anyone has the right to disagree with him, he also has the right and the obligation as our representative to state his views. We expect that from our officials. He also has the right and obligation to protect his family. No one has the right to verbally attack and threaten anyone else. This includes the family members of any elected official. This is wrong and un-American and is exactly what we are seeing in Cheshire today. These attacks and threats are so vile that law enforcement is now pursuing possible criminal action. I repeat, there should be no verbal attacks or threats on any public official or their family members. We are calling on all citizens of Cheshire to condemn and demand an immediate stop to this reprehensible behavior. Respectfully, the Republican Town Committee Executive Board. That's it. That's all we have tonight.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that last, first of all, thank you, Teresa, for the kind words. And I think that last letter, I believe it was a response to an incident that happened last week before. Don't want to get on all the details. It was that issue, again, was resolved. But I echo some of the comments that we as board members had heard from folks, things in that letter. In this day and age, we all understand that folks are understandably upset, a number of topics. However, whether it's a board member, town council member, a parent, student, anyone in our community, or frankly, any human being for that matter, let's give the benefit of the doubt. Let's not jump to conclusions. And, again, I don't want to get into details of what that was about. That was covered in a recent article. But long story short, I guess we should be not doing the do as I say, not as I do approach. Let's set a great example for our kids in our school system. Let's learn to respect one another, whether it's threats or inflammatory comments being made toward people. Let's try not to do that. And far be it from me to be perfect. I certainly am not. But we have so much going on in our town, in our country, and especially fall reopening. So far, what we've seen with the feedback from folks, and we'll get that tonight, has been very professional. There hasn't been any name calling. Folks have great concerns, great ideas, and I hope we can continue to foster that productive dialogue and see where it leads us. And I hope we do it as a community towards any topic that comes before us. And so I understand the intent of the letter. Thank you for sending that. Sometimes we need to be reminded that we're all humans, and we all feel pain and we all go through a bevy of emotions, but let's all respect each other as best we can. That being said, Superintendent Solon, I believe you have an update for us about the fall reopening. Would you like to take lead?
Thank you very much, Mr. Perugini. I just want to, echo what Mr. Perugini said at the outset, that this is, it's a new process that nobody has ever had to deal with before. And there are a lot of strong feelings on every side of this. My presentation that we sent out on Friday was a starting point for this. And there are a lot of questions, as I indicated in that presentation. And I appreciate, the 100 or so people that have emailed me questions that they had or comments that they had. It's probably more than 100 actually over the last few days. And I'm trying to respond to each of you as quickly and individually as I can. I'm on early this morning in terms of my replies. So I'm running about one day behind, and I'm trying to get to people as quickly as I can. So I appreciate their patience. What I'm going to do is run through that presentation, hitting on the areas that had the questions. I've highlighted them in the presentation. And, this situation evolves so quickly. And there's always new information. So, from Friday to today, there's new information. There are new conditions. And so things are always changing. And I hope to hit on some of those updates as well. I know one of the questions, I've seen asked is, why don't you hold this meeting in person if you think everybody can come to school in August? Well, obviously right now the executive orders allow for only meetings of 25 people. We can't accommodate that with the public. So we hold a virtual meeting and try and get everybody to attend. Maybe soon in the near future, we'll hold the board together, but not, unfortunately the public still won't be able to participate. The plan we're developing is for the end of August. And we hope that by the end of August, we could have live board meetings as well as school live. But I'm going to go through the presentation again and just kind of hit on a lot of the key points. I would ask that people that have questions, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. At that point, we can start to pick up some of the additional COVID-19 emails. But obviously, I can't recite 125 emails in the next, even the next 5 hours. So we'll try and catch on some of those additional ones at the end. So I'm just going to present screen now. Okay, so just a little bit of context. The state announced the return to plan at the end of June. I think this is important timing because obviously since the end of June and those subsequent few weeks, the rest of the United States has become much different, and they're dealing with many of the same crises that we were in our region of the country back in March and April. But it's obviously, pretty serious around the rest of the country, and as well as we've done as a state, I know a lot of people are concerned about that changing for us. This is really a first step in a long process. Tony mentioned, having additional meetings. This isn't going to be just a simple, oh, here's the plan, we're all set, because things evolve so quickly and things change so frequently. This is going to have to be flexible. There are strong open options to open school and opinions, and there are equally strong opinions to close schools. There's a petition signed by 95 people for a hybrid model. So there are a lot of strong feelings on this topic all around. And again, things are changing constantly, but our goal remains to educate students to the greatest extent possible in the manner which is safest for them in our community. That includes all of our hundreds of hundreds of staff and teachers and staff. So we have been working with a reopening committee. Their work, like our work, is really never done. We're constantly going back and looking at new information, reviewing information from the state, CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and working closely with our consulting physician, Dr. Jim O'Connor. He has been a tremendous resource to us. He participates every Monday in Zoom calls with Yale and is shared a lot of contemporary information that's helped us. So our primary resources, as I indicated, this document is on our website, the PowerPoint that I sent out Friday, which has live links to these documents, and you can see some of the information there. So the guiding principles, as of the end of June and early July, included safeguarding the health and safety of students and staff. A big piece of the guidance from at the end of June was allowing all students the opportunity to return full time. And I emailed the state again, just to confirm that they weren't wavering on that. They wrote me back this morning, and they're not. The governor and commissioner is clear that all districts should develop plans to have students report to school in the fall on a full-time basis. Now, a second level for the plan should be a combination of in-person and remote learning. And people said, well, what about other communities that have planned the hybrid model? That's not acceptable. And that's, I know that information isn't really widely out there, that the state's not accepting of that plan. Now, that being said, might things change in 2 weeks? Absolutely. Are we having conversations with people at the state about how do we provide a diversity of options, including potentially hybrid for August? Absolutely. But we are required to submit a plan to the state on July 24th that includes full-time return to school and remote learning. Those are the two options for the fall that we're required to provide. Now, a lot of this is predicated on executive orders, which expire on September 9th. So might there be a change there? Could be. But at this point, this is what we're required to communicate to the state. So knowing we only have those two options per the state plan, we created a poll with only two options for parents. This was intentional. We didn't include a hybrid option because the state requires us to submit this survey data to them by this Friday. When given the two options, what did people select? And I appreciate that this doesn't include the spectrum of feelings that exist on the topic, but it does give us a sense of, in our best case scenario, if we could do absolutely our best and satisfy everybody, about 88% of people would return. Knowing we're not satisfying 88%, there's probably a larger portion than that 12% who were indicating that they were going to try and engage in remote learning. And I know that there's a number of that 88% that would really prefer a hybrid option. But again, for the purpose of the state and the survey that I have to respond to by Friday, that wasn't an option. So there are two options that will be available for families this fall per the current state of Connecticut guidance: in-person and remote learning. Now, again, we are preparing hybrid, and I'll get to that at the end. So as I indicated, there have been a number of emails that have come in over the last few days, and I've highlighted the topics that are really the marquee areas for questions, and I'll elaborate on those as we get to each section. So mask wearing. The cloth masks have been identified as the most effective. They are more durable, washable, and we encourage people to wear cloth masks. Now, those 3-ply blue ones that you see around, those are also acceptable. We have purchased a lot of PPE in expectation of a return to school, whether it be hybrid or otherwise, or full time. We will need additional PPE when students lose, break, spill things on them. We will provide those additional PPE. The mouth, it should cover the nose and mouth at all times. And one of the questions is, in hot conditions, are they as effective? What makes them ineffective is if students or adults take them off. So in that case, we have, as we've indicated, we will move toward early dismissal or a remote learning day when it gets to be too hot in the room. There is not yet an actual number, 84 degrees Fahrenheit or something that we have identified. And I don't know that we will, the same way we don't say, X inches of snow before you close school. It's not that rigid a factor. And it could be, 84 in one room and 104 in a room across town. So we're not, going to say by room or by building. It's not an exact science like that. So maximizing social distancing, and I think this is probably one of the greatest concerns that people have, particularly at the high school level, where space between students is not, like the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends at least 3 feet. That's generally the case for students that are younger, smaller, less likely to engage in transmission through aerosol because of the proximity and their size. When you're talking about older children at the high school level, the goal would be to keep them 6 feet apart. The state guidance says that you have to maximize to the greatest extent possible that social distancing. And as I've said before, there's only really one way to expand our social distancing beyond 2 ways, beyond the current distancing that's allowed. You can either create more space, we've looked at other spaces in town and not found them to be suitable either due to size or environmental conditions. The other way that we're creating more space in the room is securing storage space and pulling everything in the room, like kind of stripping it down out so that we can create more space between students. The only other way to do it is have less students there. In the current state guidance, in the all kids back to school plan, we can't mandate kids stay home. But if students elect to, and obviously at least 12% were saying that they were going to, that would be less students in the classroom. This is not going to satisfy CDC guidance today. I think the state felt like it would be adequate in August. But again, circumstances are constantly evolving. Some self-protective measures, scheduled hand washing times, additional portable hand washing stations, portable or paper towels and waste baskets. One of the questions was about the supervision to make sure that we don't have too many kids in the bathroom at one time. And so, yes, we have to design a protocol to ensure that we don't have kids stacked one on top of the other in restrooms. Additional cleaning protocols. There are questions here about what are the chemicals used and what's the frequency of cleaning. So I'm going to pass this off to Mr. Massiana, if that's okay, to kind of walk through some of these, highlighting the cleaning schedule and then the HVAC situation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As far as cleaning, I guess there's a couple of things I'd like to say before we walk through these bullets quickly. One is that, we do have our own building maintainers that will be in the building during the day, and we rely on Performance Environmental, which is our cleaning contractor, and very capable cleaning contractor who've been cleaning our buildings typically in the evening. So it's a combination of those two forces that will be able to increase the cleaning protocols that we do. The first bullet here talks about contact areas will be limited where possible. So by propping doors open, it will prevent people from touching door handles. That reduces contact. We will be training our staff on, not only sanitizing to the extent that they're using disinfecting products. They will be trained on those. The disinfecting products that we use, I can't name them because we've got a couple of different ones that are on order. Some are already in house, but they are compliant with what the CDC guidelines are, and they are approved in that they are expected to kill coronavirus. But there's a difference between sanitizing and disinfecting. Sanitizing after you clean will clean a certain amount of bacteria and not necessarily virus. Disinfecting uses stronger products that will kill virus, but they're also a little bit more intolerable to students and staff. So as a general statement, we'll be disinfecting in the evenings and sanitizing during the day. We are going to hire additional staff from Performance Environmental so that we can clean all bathrooms in all district schools at least once during the middle of the day. We'll use our building maintainers and try to increase that, but at a minimum, we'll be cleaning all bathrooms midday, and we'll focus our attention on those high-use bathrooms in each of the schools. Our cleaning contractor will be following, guidelines. Actually, we rely, on them with to give us some of the guidelines and make recommendations for products. So they're very, very well versed, in sanitizing and disinfecting. We will be providing in all classrooms, libraries, learning spaces, disinfecting wipes, hand sanitizer. I can tell you as of today, we do have on order, hand sanitizer for all the classrooms, which should get us through the first month. We have about 2,000 hand sanitizer 16-ounce containers. We also have, received our initial supply of additional touchless hand sanitizer dispensers, which will be located near the entrances and areas such as our cafeterias and our libraries. So, I feel confident about the hand sanitizer supplies that we'll have. Disinfecting wipes, still a little bit hard to get. We do have 500 containers that have been ordered and they're on their way. We are trying to, get the best possible price for the best possible product. I mean, there are, as much as I know the governor has said that, we don't want any price gouging, some of the prices is kind of ridiculous still. So we are shopping to get the best product we can at the best possible price. And, we're mindful of inventory, and if we don't order soon, we may have some product that'll run out, but, I feel pretty confident that, we'll be able to get enough disinfecting wipes to get us through the first month of school. We may have to pay a little bit of a higher price than I'd like to, but we'll manage that. And I know the other question that has been received from a couple of different sources is what are we doing as far as, air circulation throughout the buildings? There's a whole technical aspect of this that I'm not an expert in, but I will share some of the information that Rich Clavette, our facilities manager, has shared that, we're doing or will do over the next few weeks. And we're also consulting with an HVAC, engineer on some of the things that we need to do. I know there's a lot of different recommendations out there. So I'm just going to run through a few things. First of all, we had already started inspecting and cleaning all the exhaust ductwork this summer. We do that, every summer. Anyway, we usually do it on a rotating, basis through all of the schools. But obviously, with the concern over COVID, we've stepped that up. So, we will be cleaning the ductwork this summer. The filtration that we have, not every building, I think the board members, and a lot of parents and staff realize that most of our buildings do not have air conditioning. The only school that's fully air conditioned at this point is Highland, parts of Cheshire High School. Some of our buildings really have no air conditioning other than window units to speak of. So in those cases, though, where we do have, air conditioning and or it doesn't necessarily have to be air conditioning. Some of our schools are heated mechanically through rooftop units. There's no air conditioning, just heat blows through, but we are upgrading the filters. We've been using MERV 8 filters and we're moving to MERV 11 filters. And all that means is that a MERV 11 catches smaller particles and prevents them from, from entering the airspace, where students and staff will be. There is a little bit of an offset by using MERV 13 versus MERV 8. You increase your energy consumption and you somewhat decrease the amount of air that pushes through those filters, but certainly, worth doing in this case, and that is already underway. We'll also be changing out filters instead of twice per year during the school year. We'll be changing the filters 3 times, to try and stay on top of that. Our own staff, does those filter changes. It's part of our routine maintenance anyway. We're just stepping it up. One of the questions and recommendations and concerns that was received was the amount of fresh air that comes in, through our mechanical systems, and into our buildings. And there are recommendations around that from the CDC, among others. But I just want to explain that there is a balance. You can't have 100% fresh air coming into a building when on a day like today, it's very hot and very humid out, because all you're doing is you're pulling fresh air in that's, charged with humidity, which can lead to mold growth. So there is a balance as to, how much fresh air is allowed, based on the time of year and other conditions. So that is going to be adjusted appropriately so that it's balanced. But, again, that's something that our systems, if there is a building control system, will do for us automatically, and that will be managed by our facilities manager. The other, and probably the last thing that I want to touch on here is, one of the things that we can do in spaces where we have windows is open windows. So to the extent we don't have air conditioning, we can open windows. And again, there's a balance. On a really hot, humid day, opening the windows may allow more humidity in, but it will allow fresh air. Not all our classrooms are near a window. We have many interior classrooms. We don't have much of a choice on those. And so one of the things that our facility staff is doing is going through buildings, just making sure that we repair any windows that might be inoperable, inspect them. And in a nutshell, we're doing everything that we can along this front of, improving the air circulation, increasing the filtration, consulting with experts where appropriate. And I think we're doing what's reasonable, and, will help any spread of COVID. And I guess my final point is, we're going to be operating this plan on the basis that the infection rate in our area is very low. If the infection of COVID, increases, or even if we have a case of COVID, I think that will change what we do. But it's important to understand that when we start out in August, we do expect that, the infection rate in our state is low, and we won't have COVID in our building. So all these precautions we're taking, are intended to prevent, if there is a case that breaks out, it would minimize the impact of that. And Jeff, I think that's all I have on this slide.
Okay, thank you. Lunch protocols are another issue that's come up quite a bit in the email responses. At the high school and middle school, we're looking at not only adding additional waves if need be, but really trying to spread students out to the greatest extent possible. So we will have students who are in the CAF, in the gyms, outside. So we're really trying to leverage all available space to provide for socially distant dining. That's a greater space, obviously, than in the classroom level. People don't have masks. So we're trying to have people still seated by cohort, but spread out to the greatest extent we can. Additionally, at the elementary level, we're exploring dining in classroom versus dining in common areas. So you remain in your cohort group with the mask off. But, obviously there are a lot of challenges in dining for both the high school, middle school, the secondary options, and the elementary that we're trying to work through. I can't say that we have, like for many of these, every detail down yet. We have round ideas on July 10th and 14th that we're continuing to work with the health department, and in this case, the cafeteria staff and the building principals to work out what's going to be best. But I want to actually just go back to this, that lunch will be available to all in some way, shape, or form, is what the plan is right now. Even if we are remote, we'd go back to the grab and go option that we provided last year very successfully. Cohorting is an area where I have a lot more questions from the high school level, some at the middle school level, and I haven't had really many questions at the elementary level. The one question that comes up, I guess, that's related to all levels is the efficacy of cohorting when students are also exposed to students on the bus. And, it's a fair question. Students are also exposed to other individuals when they go home. It's not, the strictest cohorting in the world where, you know, you would only be in your home with individuals you live with. Now, in this situation, you are exposed, obviously, to other individuals who are exposed to other individuals. Cohorting is most effective when you can have rapid testing. Right now, as a state, we really don't have rapid testing. There's one rapid testing station that I'm aware of in Hartford. The one in New Haven closed. And, you know, per the health department, as of today, the testing that's available takes 7 to 10 days to turn around, which makes cohorting not really the most effective strategy at that point. In high school situations, you know, it's a balance between how do we allow students access to all the courses they would need to graduate and better fulfill their educational goals versus cohorting. And so we're still trying to work on, is there a way that we can be more restrictive at the high school? Now, Cheshire's not the only district dealing with these challenges. I'll tell you that I speak regularly with another group of superintendents from all over the state. Actually, Marlene Solano, our assistant superintendent, she's often dealing with other assistant superintendents around curriculum and instruction issues. Mr. Massiana also with facility issues. I'll tell you, once we release this plan, more than a dozen districts have contacted us to say, this looks like a great plan per the state guidelines. Is it perfect? No. But, you know, this is the best we can do within the constraints we were given. And we will continue to improve on that and report that out to the board and community. But this is where we are today. Transportation, questions about bus aids. Bus aids are there to try and provide more support on the bus to make sure that students are wearing masks and are distancing to the greatest extent possible. The only people that we want sitting together initially are siblings. Obviously, in some cases that it won't only be siblings. Masks will be required. We're encouraging families to drive their children to school where possible. We recognize that one of the facility issues we have in buildings is parent drop off already and pickup. So we're working, I reached out today to the Cheshire Police Department to work with their traffic division to support us in designing plans that allow for a safe and efficient drop off and pickup. Again, it's not great now, but we hope to make it at least what you're getting today under these conditions where we know we're going to have more vehicles. Health protocols, some questions about the smart thermometers. We can't require people to participate with smart thermometers at home. They're anonymous. I don't know if you did it or you didn't, but this is a way that our health district has really endorsed is a strategy to measure the impact of any sort of virus on the community. So if we're getting more fevers, the Chespercott would be the first to know and be able to educate us and intervene. The thermometers, a lot of questions about when will they be distributed. Our plan is to make them available to families in August. Again, we're not screening every individual when they come to the door. That's not current health guidance per our medical advisement, that it's just not that valuable because you get a lot of false negatives or a lot of false positives, excuse me, and you have people sitting on top of each other waiting to be tested, which is we're trying to avoid that to the greatest extent we can. Health protocols, obviously, number one is stay home if you are feeling sick. One of the big questions I've been getting is about testing. I just talked a little bit about testing and the availability of such in our state. Right now, it's relatively limited, to be fair. You could probably get tested. It's just the turnaround on that is 7 to 10 days. We don't have definitive guidance as of today to report about how will we handle a positive test or a presumed positive. I'm meeting with superintendents from Southington, Meriden, and Wallingford on Monday with our respective health directors to try and come up with a strategy for that we can communicate to people. But right now they're saying that we need to just take it case by case and respond accordingly. So I will look forward to sharing more information on that as we move forward. I will reiterate, though, that if there's a positive test or a presumed positive in a building, we'd notify people within that building to make sure that they were aware. So if they did choose to, if they were in person and the student chose to go remote, we can permit that. That's one of the questions that we had as well about students who chose in person versus remote. Can they go back and forth? And the answer there is yes. Obviously, it's not good for the student or anybody in the building if they're changing every other week, but we can, hopefully if you started remote and things are going well and you want to go in person, you can do that, or vice versa. Before and after school care, the why, and I think this is a source of confusion for some, that right now the state does not require children in day camps to wear face masks. Now, since this pandemic started in March, the state tracks daycare providers and camp providers. In the state of Connecticut, there are 15,000 that have run over that time. 20 of them have closed due to COVID issues. So the transmission rate, now these are people without masks that were together in April during the height of what we were dealing with. So the transmission rate was quite low amongst children. The staff do need to wear masks, though, at these camps. So the transition back to school, and one of the things that we are proposing, and we have to get permission from the state because it does not meet the all kids all day requirement. If we were to start school tomorrow, we would have to get permission to bring kids back in smaller groups. So maybe a third or a quarter of the students each of the first 4 days of school. We didn't have the opportunity to have spring transition tours and all that other stuff that we typically do for students who are transitioning to new schools. We would also really want to have small group time with new teachers, so students can meet their new teachers. They can understand what the protocols are for mask wearing. They can travel to school and get a layout of the building, understand where they're going outside for breaks, understand where they're having lunch, that sort of thing, before they get really into the full year. A smooth transition is so critical for our students and staff that we want to do everything we can to support them. So again, we would talk about that with the state to see if we can provide that. Today's news is that the state has reduced the number of student days from 177 to 180 to 177. So in this case, we will add 3 professional development days, probably toward the beginning of the school year, when it's hottest and our staff are still learning, kind of what they're doing in terms of, this will really help our remote instruction. And if we need to go there and to support kids who may be home, as well as, if we're in a hybrid model, kind of coaching our staff through that, or, the full in model. So for those students that are engaging in remote learning, some of the highlights here, I want to reiterate that, when we went to remote learning, I've said this, probably now ad nauseum, that we had centuries of brick and mortar learning. Literally 2 school days we were closed before we went to remote learning. And nothing, it wasn't perfect. It did not replicate what happened in the classroom, but it was a pretty good effort, I would say, and a lot of our families felt that way in the meetings we've had with them for the circumstances. But we also recognize that, here we are now months later, we want to provide a remote learning experience that most closely reflects what's happening in the classroom. The best way to do that is through synchronous instruction, recognizing that that doesn't work for every family. We anticipated actually last spring that there would be a number of illnesses and people weren't going to be able to access live learning at the time. Well, thank God that didn't happen. But if that were to happen, or people have work schedules and can't be with kids, they may not be able to have their child log on to a live session. We want to be able to provide some asynchronous opportunities too. So synchronous just means basically when the class is logged on. So if they're doing a 10 a.m. Reading group in school, a child at home would be going onto a Google Meet and doing a 10 a.m. live with their class. That's synchronous learning. And what we've started to work toward is providing technology that really just amplifies a Google Meet. So right now, when a teacher has Google Meets with kids, it's just like what you're seeing now. Teacher on a camera, the audio isn't always perfect. And certainly if there are people in the room, it can be harder to hear. So what we're purchasing are, for 56 classrooms, a camera that's mounted and just pointed at the front of the room that the teacher controls. When the teacher brings up on their screen and presents the same way I'm doing, you see what's on the smart board. The kids in the room see what's on the smart board. Audio is connected to the mic that the teacher wears around their neck. So the microphone, the teacher controls that. They can turn it on and off. The microphone plays through the speakers in the room, but also to the students at home through the computer. When the student at home speaks, when they're unmuted from their mic, when they speak, it also plays through the speakers so the whole class can hear it. When students in the class are having discussion, there are additional microphones in the ceiling that pick up that audio so that the student at home can hear it. Again, these things can be all turned on and off by the teacher in the room, but it certainly provides a much more realistic experience for any student who's engaging in synchronous learning at home. Through asynchronous learning, we hope to be able to provide more videos of not live teacher instruction, but teacher instruction. So recordings of our staff rather than just sending somebody to a link. Those links should supplement what our teachers do, obviously not replace that. So for asynchronous learning environments, that things like PE obviously can't really be offered that valuably live with a mic setup. It's not that sort of coursework. We would be doing a asynchronous video. Special education services are something that we appreciate, that many of our students who receive special education services are immunocompromised as well. And so those families have the added concern of not just education, but that health and safety situation. And so we're working with those situations individually. Tracy Hussey, our pupil personnel director, and her team have really tried to develop strategies to support students who are at home and need to engage in education. So they're looking at those on a case-by-case basis. So our key is flexibility. We realize that, right now, the state has said you can do one of two things. That may very well change. So as such, we're providing, we're developing a hybrid model. And I'm working with, as I said, other area superintendents to develop that because we have a common problem of staffing. So if our day that we have staff home for cleaning or whatever is different than the neighboring town, we share staff, so it creates problems for staffing and me being able to get people available to teach classes on. So we're all trying to sync this up. And so what we're currently looking at is a model that provides for in-person live instruction for half the students. So like cohort A, if you said half the students in a 4th grade class were cohort A, they would come to school Monday and Tuesday for the full day. The other group would be home those days. Everybody would be home on Wednesday, and then they would flip on Thursday and Friday in this this option. Wednesday would be a cleaning day with limited high need students in attendance. And again, we're trying to synchronize this with some of our neighbors to support staffing and other needs that we have. So, I appreciate everybody, sitting through this hour to try and better understand where we are and why we are where we are. The fact that we still have many unanswered questions. And I appreciate that. Everybody wants to know, how is X, Y, or Z going to work? And as things evolve and information that we gather changes and evolves, today there was a positive report about the development of a vaccine. Now that would dramatically change things for us. So as these things evolve, we're trying to better provide details that we can in turn provide to the board and to the community so that they can make the community in August, our parents can make a more informed decision about, is sending my child to school the right thing to do? Is there or is there not some sort of hybrid option? Or what will remote learning look like so that I can make that determination? The survey was not set in stone. As I indicated the day that we sent the survey, July 7th, this was not something that was definitive. You're not declaring today. We would look for people to declare in the middle of August so that we could better understand what the enrollment will look like. Again, with the flexibility to be able to change when they need to. Now, that gives us a month to provide more information. We don't want to take the full month, but as I said, as things evolve, it's going to take some time to get this information together, put a plan together to reopen school in a way that we never have before. But again, these are the state guidelines as they exist today. And, we're continuing to talk to them about how to meet those guidelines or provide different sort of guidance. So that's it for my presentation, and I want to be able to field questions from the board.
I have suggested before we get the board, have we gotten any additional emails for the COVID mailbox? And I'll give us a chance to formulate our questions as we
Sure.
go up for
A handful here. If you guys don't mind, if you have questions now, it will help. It'll help me kind of buzz through these as because
Probably very
redundant from what I've already shared, and I don't want to waste anybody's time.
So up first is Tim White, and then Adam Grippo.
Thank you, Tony. Jeff, thank you for this. Thank you, Marlene, Vin, and all the staff who helped with getting us to this point. I like the idea. I mean, I think it's good to follow the state guidelines, but I just have to ask the question, if you don't, is there any sort of, if we don't, is there some sort of enforcement mechanism? And I just am wondering, like, Hamden's doing a hybrid.
Well, they may not be.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, Hamden announced a hybrid, but I know that somebody reached out to them rather quickly about that. So in terms of a consequence for doing any sort of alternative, we're not there yet. We've talked to we're initiating conversations about what alternatives might we be able to consider and trying to work through it productively, rather than just defiantly on July 14th.
No, and that's not what I don't want that at all. Like I said, I mean, I definitely prefer to follow the state guidelines. I just wonder if we end up with a situation where it just really doesn't make any sense and they're slow to act or
Right.
something like.
Yeah, they haven't declared that.
Okay,
Told
thank
us.
you. So I heard I don't know if I missed it tonight per se, but I know you were talking about the parent surveys, parent perspective, something I mentioned a few months ago in one of our meetings. And I know you're aware of it. At the time, you hadn't heard much about it. But teachers, do we have any significant number of teachers who have said that they don't want to step foot in the classroom? I mean, not 1 or 2 out of 400, but like, 10%, 20%. Have you gotten any sort of feedback like that?
Sure. We started surveying teachers today. I mentioned there's a survey that we need to submit to the state on Friday. And part of that rationale is we were, still receiving guidance from not just our attorney, but there are other attorneys offering guidance to districts on this issue, because there are legal guidelines by which you have to fulfill. So whether it's an ADA issue versus healthcare, a different sort of issue, that there are a myriad of them. So we did put that survey out today. I should have more information next week. And I am meeting, just to talk about the personnel issue. I'm meeting with, our team, our leadership team at central office is meeting with various groups that have, the stake in this. So we're meeting with teachers Thursday. I think it's IAs and maintenance staff next week, nurses, so we're meeting with their leadership, secretaries, to say, because our goal is obviously for parents and for students, we want to create the safest and most welcoming environment we can for them to return. And so it's important to meet with all those groups as well as getting parent feedback.
Okay, and just last comment here, which is, I know you mentioned September 9th is sort of an end for executive orders right now.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, so just, as far as I'm concerned, just keep me in mind, keep the BOE in mind about any actions that you might need to take, sort of rapid fire, keep us aware of things and how things progress.
It will do. It may be, the executive order may be extended if the conditions change here. Obviously, the executive orders are issued under a state of emergency. Now the state of emergency is set to expire on September 9th. So if the state of emergency is extended, then we'll be still using those executive orders. If it's not, then it's kind of like you're free to do whatever you want.
Okay. But I mean, but if I recall correctly, kind of what happened with the executive order is it gave more authority to you as a superintendent. So when the executive order ends, that authority would cede back to the board, right? Is that
Yeah, but we really haven't,
Okay.
utilized anything like that.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Tony.
You're up.
Thank you. Dr. Solon, that was an excellent presentation with a lot of information. And I know a lot of people have been watching this evening, and I'm sure they're all trying to digest this plan as well. I'll begin with 2 questions. The first one is a 2-parter. So policy-wise, we have an attendance policy, which I believe is 20 excused absences. And I wasn't sure if the governor's executive orders covered whether or not that policy is suspended or not, as far as how quarantining may occur.
Yeah, the governor's orders don't, but we have the authority to address that. And I know that, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Adam, because that was an area that I've had some questions on, and there are some more here about attendance. But the attendance, we understand it's like extraordinary this year. That you may be home not because you're sick, but because you have to be for 5 days or 7 days or something like that. And we don't want that to count against your matriculation. But what we do know also is that it really underscores the importance of us providing a remote learning environment that is as good as can possibly be. And particularly if your child is home healthy. You know, I got 2 little boys that I don't want playing Roblox and Fortnite all day if they're home. So anyway, the attendance policy is something we have to look at. But like I said, the virtual learning, the remote learning piece is really important. And to just touch again on that technology outfit, I was explaining today that we did this as an investment in our students' education, not just a Band-Aid for COVID. Now, the cost of doing one of these rooms is about $3,200 per room. That's a good chunk of change for us. And, you know, so you're just short of $200,000 when you're doing 56, 60 rooms. In order for us to really expand remote learning, we would probably have to add at least another 60 rooms. If we were going to go a hybrid model that includes, you know, in school, out of school, we would really have to engage in a conversation with the town council. Now, I am reticent to do that today because I also don't want to just spend $200,000 if I don't, you know, again, it's an investment, but I don't want to, you know, treat it like it's just free money either. This will be very valuable, resource and technology for students when COVID is over, but it's still 200 grand. So, you know, that is something we're looking at. Don't be surprised if next month, particularly if we're going to that sort of hybrid model, I turn around and say to you guys, you know, we've had these rooms installed, come look at them, because here's why we need another 60, not just for the hybrid learning, but for the value of what would take place in the room once it's over. So I just want to underscore that point too, as an elaboration on the attendance.
Okay, thank you. And so would we need to, do you think we would need to suspend anything as far as you're concerned? Whatever occurs, we're fine for now as far as holding anyone to their 20 days for matriculation.
Yeah, you know, right now I don't think we would do that.
Okay.
You know, we are modifying our attendance. We're reviewing that. I met with our administrators today. We have to look at that.
Okay. So the next one then gets a little more complicated, would be the thresholds for quarantine. I know I've seen the one of the major questions out there is, well, what if a teacher goes down? Number one, what happens to the class? If a student in the class, I guess, feels they're sick, and then if or they test positive for COVID, does the entire cohort have to be quarantined for 14 days? Have you done any wargaming as to how that would look and how that would affect the school population and their education? Or is it just a matter of being able to transition instantly to the remote model? And then are you expecting the teacher who potentially could be sick to continue teaching remotely as well? Or have you gone through any of that kind of situation?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously super messy, and it gets more difficult for every school system in Connecticut, every business in Connecticut that has people returning to work, given the fact that we don't have rapid testing availability that's easily available. So, you know, if I suspect a student or staff member is sick and they were able to go to a pediatrician or a walk-in and get a quick swab, half hour, you know if you got it or you don't, that is much different than, I think you're sick, you get swabbed, we'll let you know in 2 weeks. And so we're working with the health department, Dr. O'Connor, the state, to try and develop guidance around that, because that's a very real issue, the testing.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it's a huge moving target right now. So I guess so then for my last question then on flexibility, you had mentioned it before. So if we had what 11% of I guess families were saying they wouldn't begin the year in person, and so then you would have the 88% in person. What if someone were to decide to switch? What would be the time, the notice that would need to be given if someone wanted to come back in or someone wanted to leave?
Yeah, I think it'd be about a day or two.
A day or two. Okay.
That's
you.
ambitious. We'd like to try and turn it around as quickly as we can. But the only thing I would caveat that with is for somebody who's been on remote learning to return, if they need to have some sort of test, which I don't know why we would, because we don't test everybody who comes every day anyway. But that's something we would work through with the health department. But I'd like to be able to turn it around pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Andrew, you're up, and then Ann.
Sure. Jeff, I just want to say thank you for everything you've been doing and your team. You guys really put together a good plan in short order. I know that the game is constantly changing, so I appreciate all the work that you guys have been putting in this summer. I'm following up on what Adam was saying. Will there be a cutoff whereas families will alert the district if they will be sending their children back to school? The only reason why I say that, I know that you're saying that people can go from remote learning to back in the classroom, but just when it comes to space planning in the schools and reducing the class sizes and maintaining the social distancing, wouldn't it make sense to know exactly what that number is, set that number, and then I'm kind of the party that if you're going to keep your kid home, you should have, give the district a couple weeks in order to plan for that student to come back and forth versus.
Yeah, we're shooting for mid-August to be able to have enough. I think it's a great question, Andrew. That's that balance between we need enough advance notice, but I think it's also fair to our parents to give them as much detail as we can about what school will look like before I ask you to decide. We all appreciate, I know you're a parent of kids in our system. I have kids too. I want to know before I make that decision what's appropriate for my child and family. And so we're going to try and balance those two competing issues.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrew. Ann, you're up.
Hi. Yeah, Jeff, thank you, and Marlene and the whole team. This is a huge undertaking that you've been doing this summer. When will we know if we need some lead-in time if we're going to be retrofitting these classrooms with this new technology, right? So do we need to know sort of when we might be able to do this hybrid model by a certain time, or because I'm pretty convinced that the hybrid model is kind of going to be the way to start out. And that's just because I think things will change as we go through the next several weeks. If any indication from what is happening in other parts of the country start to happen here in Connecticut. So I'm just wondering, because doing the hybrid model really is going to take quite a bit of time to get classrooms retrofitted in order to do it. Do we need to sort of know from the state at a certain point that we do have the go-ahead to do that?
Yeah, I think that we need to get information from the state. We are planning the hybrid to an extent, in terms of installing those, the technology, like even now, the technology we've ordered is extensive, and the install doesn't just happen in a day. It's pretty significant. They're telling us we'll guarantee it by September 15th. With a likelihood of it being installed before that.
Okay.
but the biggest challenge is really availability of the materials. So like right now, there's such a demand on this. It's like tents. So for example, even if we wanted to hold our traditional graduation ceremony, even if that was permitted, getting tents right now is super hard, in chairs, because the restaurants have them all. So like there's a lot of demand for this technology from businesses and things like that and other school systems. So, when we put our information public, we had a ton of people reaching out to us, and we've been kind of close to the vest about where we're getting it from because it's competitive. So even if we said we're going to install more, it would be throughout the fall. Best case, we'd have more installed by October 15th, another 60 rooms.
Great. And the other sort of follow-up question would be, is there not, in your expert opinion, is there not a lot of teacher training that would be involved with using this equipment, or is it pretty?
Yeah, it's
because it uses the smart boards. Yeah, because it uses the smart boards. It's already part of the teaching.
Yeah, it's super intuitive, because if you've run Google Meet before, it's a lot like that. You're just running a Google Meet and turning your camera on and off, turning the mics on and off. It's very much like that, making a presentation, whether you're at home or in the room.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Faith, you have a question.
Yeah, first of all, I know that there are a lot of people watching on YouTube, and there have been some really dedicated members of the community who've been sitting in on these committee meetings, and I just want to commend them. They've done a fabulous job, and Jeff and Marlene and Vin have been peppered with questions over and over and over again. So thank you to those guys who are watching. Jeff, just to be sure, you have ordered the equipment. You don't need approval from the board to expend those funds from.
Yeah, that's correct. It's all on the state bid.
Okay.
And so when previous meetings, when we talked about it and reached out to people, it was endorsed by board members, but we could just do that out of our operating budget if we wish. It's just an expenditure of the school system.
Okay.
So they have authority to make.
So you're retrofitting those rooms no matter what. If COVID goes away tomorrow, are you going to pursue this? Okay.
Because we think, actually, from an instructional perspective, like I did a classroom walkthrough where, myself and a group of other superintendents go to different districts and provide feedback on the instruction and how to improve teaching and learning. I did that in Weston several months ago before the whole COVID thing. All their rooms are outfitted with this sort of technology, and it's such a game changer. The kids tell me the ability to focus, the hearing of the information is so much clearer, and the engagement is so much easier when everybody can hear every word that's said from the teacher. So it is an investment. So that's why I would say, yeah, I think we need to move forward with this. Would I be doing it in this fashion and this expeditiously if it weren't for COVID? No, but it is valuable after the fact.
If I could add one more question. Okay. Someone raised an interesting point in one of the letters today regarding the filming of teachers and students in classrooms with privacy concerns. That's just one policy. Tim has already raised this, how a quick response by the subcommittees, wherever it may be. But in policy in particular, do you see other areas besides the privacy where we may have to make some adjustments? Are these waived because of executive orders? I mean, how is this all going to be dealt with?
Now, Marlene and I were on a call yesterday. We were talking about, well, I guess, the state was indicating that, well, I guess where it says policy in the reopen plan, we don't really mean policy as in a Board of Education policy that we're going to change for the COVID period. We mean you just need to have a clear protocol on this. So, with the cameras in the classroom, the camera is situated in such a way that it's only shooting at the front of the room where we don't have students seated anyway. Additionally, at least not during COVID, additionally, we are working with the union to facilitate this. If people think that, like, if they're just doing on a Google Meet, that they can't already be recorded, they're crazy, you know, or you know, we have situations where it's not permitted, but people have cell phones out in school and record each other. It's, you know, that's the reality of the world we live in today. It's not a, you know, it's an unfortunate reality, but this is so powerful to support teachers and students through this difficult time that it's well worth it. And then afterward, you don't even need the camera, but it's the camera itself is a very small part financially of the install.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I had a, I'm chuckling because I sent Jeff and Marlene today, I don't know, it was like 3 pages of summary questions that I've seen. There's a lot of questions that, when details emerge about how, for example, we're going to enforce, for example, if a student shows up at the front door without a mask, is not allowed to come in without one, and we give them one and they refuse. You know, I think there's a lot of that detail. Believe it, and I want to thank, first of all, let me just backtrack a little bit. I want to thank the entire reopening team, basically our entire CPS staff, and honestly our board, and so many parents out there that have been, in a great way, involved, answering questions, giving ideas. There's a lot of work going into this. You know, I don't want to beat a drum on that, but, and there's still a lot more work coming. So I'd be, you know, being a disservice not to recognize everyone that's been helping, and I know there's more to come. Even today, we received more messages from folks that want to help in some way, shape, or form, and that's awesome, because it is going to take a community effort to get us through this safely. That being said, testing. I think it's an important point that you made earlier, Jeff, that right now, at least in Connecticut, and I haven't heard otherwise from other Board of Ed chairs yet, but there is not a proliferation of rapid response testing. And I'm pretty sure Chester would advise us if there were, and to take advantage of it. My guess is, if and when that does become available, I hope it does, even if it's during the course of the school year, if there was rapid testing and you could get, or a student or parent could get a result within a short period of time, is that something that Chester has indicated that we should enforce doing in the schools? Or is that really up to the parents to routinely test their kids? I know we don't have a solution yet. That's
right.
Coming, but
yeah,
testing comes up all the time, every day.
Yeah, we don't, like, during strep, you know, outbreaks and things like that, we're not testing kids in school. That's really a function of the child's pediatrician. So, you know, this is unique in the sense that it's a global pandemic. I think in a perfect world, Cheshire would have multiple locations where you could get a rapid response test. But I've never heard anybody say that districts, school systems should be testing sites. It wouldn't shock me if someday that were to come to fruition, but that's never been part of the conversation yet.
No, I understand. I say this because I know I probably sound like a stuck record, I guess, in a loop, but we don't have a vaccine for COVID yet. And I know there's some development, some approaching trials. And I'm of the mindset, because I do work in the especially drug pharma part of this healthcare system, that even when a vaccine is made available, it's going to take time to proliferate throughout the entire world, let alone our country. So even if a vaccine came up during the school year, that's awesome. I don't believe that everybody will be fully vaccinated and, you know, immune just overnight. It's going to take time to distribute. Knowing that the nature of COVID is a little unpredictable, as we are seeing spikes in other states for various reasons, you know, I am in the mindset that we're planning for the worst, hoping for the best. And I go to the hybrid model you mentioned. And I know the state right now is only looking at, allowing us to look at two options. I do know other school districts, as folks have mentioned and emailed us, have talked about a hybrid model, but that's all it is right now, is talk. So that's not to say it's not going to happen. I would hope our governor and the State Department of Education are going to be listening to everyone soon, that there should be a third option in a hybrid model, because there's strong support from a number of stakeholders. So I know there's a hybrid model plan in the works for us. I know it involves around what you mentioned earlier, Jeff, which is splitting the groups of students, 2 days a week on off site with a day of cleaning. But in the worst case scenario, if we find ourselves shut down with schools and back to remote learning, I think I forwarded the board members the comments that please, no more Google pre-recorded meetings. I think folks have had enough of that. So we are looking for a rich, equitable, live classroom situation. So the technology, and I know that Jeff was kind enough to kind of give me a little more detail on technology, where it's coming from. I'm going to say where, but if that technology can be used in the classroom, I would imagine it can also be used at home in some ways of teachers that teach remotely. Long story short, what's the difference between hybrid and synchronous learning if we remove transporting kids to and from schools split day a week? I mean, wouldn't remote learning, ideally, if that's what we had to do, would rely on this technology, so we could have a sort of like a live Google Classroom with the microphones on and kids participating,
Sure.
versus watching pre-recorded videos. I think that would be the best solution in the worst case scenario if we couldn't go back to school, in my opinion.
It would really be the equivalent of being in school, is the point. I mean, it's as close as we can get you to being there without being there.
So I guess what I'm saying is, can we sneak this hybrid thing under remote learning option to the state?
Yeah. No.
It is remote learning.
Yeah. If I still have to provide all day, every day for everybody. If people elect remote learning, I want it to be a powerful experience for them, a valuable experience. I also understand that, for some people, particularly of younger ages, are little guys and girls, when they're in second grade, if they may not always be in a position where they can engage in live synchronous learning, depending on their family situation.
Yeah, I understand that.
So we also want to provide, we have to provide some asynchronous learning for some kids too, which is a challenge to do.
Right, I guess I'm trying to be hopeful in that, we're not waiting until last week of August before the governor says, okay, hybrid's okay, go.
Yeah.
But I think they come around. And just for folks, I'm on a lot of Board of Ed chair emails with Cave, and these questions we're receiving, if there's any positive and all that, besides the great ideas, is that we're not alone as a community. Everybody's got the same questions. Every school district is working for this Friday response in the survey, is working for those two options for the state, but is also working that third option in their back pocket for hybrid learning, well, that seems to be the most popular thing. I have some other things. Until we get further details on the mechanics of, the traffic situation at the schools with parent drop off and how it's going to work, I would just be, throwing things out there we can't answer right now. But what I would say is, one of the things that would help is, I know the reopening team has been meeting, and I want to thank all those folks. I'm pretty sure Maura from Cheshire is on there, which is amazing to me. But sometimes I wonder if she just clones herself, because between that and being around town in so many services industries on top of this, I think people underestimate what Cheshire is doing for the community at so many levels. So thank everyone for that. The reopening team meetings, I thought that they would be available on YouTube. I haven't seen anything yet, but I think the reason I bring this up is that may help answer a lot of questions before they're asked. Is if some of the folks can, see those meetings, obviously after they're done, they might reduce the amount of questions coming in to the group.
Yeah,
So,
I think moving forward, we could probably do more of that. Originally, I wasn't comfortable recording because we were discussing a property acquisition, which We didn't want to inflate the cost of the property. Taking that off the table, I'm certain, and then we had a technical snafu, to be frank, on another one. But certainly happy to publicize that going forward.
Yeah, if we can, within reason. All these questions, I know you try to answer every single one of them. I try to. We all do. It's getting a little, yeah, I won't say overwhelming, but it could become a full-time job on top of the 2 full-time jobs you already have. So, is there any way you think, next few weeks we can get a website up or a page on our site that, is just focused on the CPS reopening, FAQs, all this information, and maybe people can look there first to see if their questions are already answered. And I know it's more work on the staff, but it worked so well for COVID-19 during this, online learning period. It might work okay for you.
Probably easier than answering 150 emails. So yeah, I would definitely, we could, now that we have a really good sense of what the questions are, I could certainly build that up onto our website. Right now, if people are watching, the COVID, or go to our homepage and the COVID stuff is all there. All my correspondence is there, as well as the remote learning site. But we could definitely add frequently asked questions clearly. So it's a good suggestion, Tony.
One last thing, the tech, I call it tech expansion, but the technology that you and I talked about, and you mentioned tonight about the, in classroom and microphones and all that. I think we probably should give the town council a heads up that, there's going to be some cost. And I appreciate the fact that we could try to absorb that out of operating budget. It's just that, we have $200,000 that we set aside, and thank town council set up the account for us to do that, to use towards reopening costs. I don't know if that $200,000 has been exhausted already, just by the nature of PPE, disinfectant, additional cleaning help, et cetera. Then we layer in about another $880,000, $190,000 for this technology to come out of our operating budget, when that, is, again, unless it's still fairly tight. And I think at least give a heads up that these are things that we're looking at, because if we don't need that money, let's say on August 27th or 28th, and we may need it in December, at least they can plan for that, ahead of time. And if it doesn't happen, it's not needed, it's great. I think that, we will need some help in some way, shape, or form. I just can't imagine how, and I won't put you guys on the spot, you, Vincent, in particular, but, I think we're going to easily chew that $200,000 just getting ready for reopening. I can't imagine that we could absorb the rest of it through our operating budget without something being put on. So it's my 2 cents, but we can discuss it, at a later time on that.
The the CARES Act money, this is another question that I'm going to just weave in from COVID email question. That was $99,000. Marlene, you're pretty well versed in the CARES Act money. If you don't mind just kind of talking about how we spent that money, or getting reimbursed for what we've already spent.
Sure. So there was a little bit of hurry up and wait with this money, in that we need to share it with the local private schools. And so there was, we were waiting on some further guidance, and that came out last week. So we're waiting for what that calculation is that we need to share with the private schools. Having said that, we were going to put in for reimbursement for as many iPads in kindergarten and as many of the first grade Chromebooks as we could. So that's what that funding was earmarked for.
Got it. And I take up so much time. So I'm done with my questions. I think someone's got their mic on. It's enough to hear me in, mono, let alone stereo. So I don't want to wish that on anybody. Just one last thing. If for some reason, Jeff, Vincent, and Marlene, we think that we need to look at some of our policies to help enforce some of the things that we have to do for reopening, you know, we can always get the policy committee ahead of the school. I'm not sure what that is yet, but we're certainly open to that. That being said, I'm sorry. Before I get to Adam and Tim again, Catherine, did you have anything? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I didn't see your hand raised.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. No, I mean, I am on the reopening committee, so I don't maybe have as many questions as some of the other people do. And Faith is also on that committee. And I think what I want to say is not so much a question, but you know, the vast, you know, the kinds of experience and expertise that is represented on that committee, I think people should take a lot of comfort from that. You know, Jeff has really brought together, you know, people from all sorts of areas, you know, including more Esposito and then nurse supervisor, you know, consulting with the pediatrician, consulting with the fire chief. It's been a very collaborative, really creative committee. And I just want to make sure, you know, people understand that the overriding critical factor that we've all been focused on is like, how are we going to do this in a way that's safe and makes people comfortable that either have to work in the building or send their children to the building. So I just, you know, I want to just emphasize that's top of mind for all of us. And, you know, so far, I think the plan is coming together, but there's no question that as things evolve, which they seem to be doing every single day, we're just going to have to be as nimble as we can. And yes, I completely agree with you, Tony, that it's probably a good idea to start, you know, talking to the town council. Yeah, I guess that's it. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, and it's just want to, yeah, I agree with you on the reopening team. I just don't talk about that enough with folks because I'm not sure if the folks on the team really want their names out there. You know, I'm sure they don't mind. That's why I'm hoping that we can get the videos up, people can watch and maybe reach out as needed. But so folks watching do know that both Faith Ham and Catherine are on that reopening team representing the Board of Ed. We try to spread the love here, so we're all working on different committees. Adam, you had your hand up earlier, then Tim, and for now. So Adam, did you want to chime in?
Yes. Firstly, I just wanted to give clarification on Faith's, I guess, comment before about privacy. This issue had come up throughout the distance learning in the springtime, and I had had a conversation with Jeff about it. It's a combination of state law because teachers are mandatory reporters. So if they do happen to see something in the background of a student's camera, like if they're doing a live transmission like we are here, that potentially could be where a teacher would be compelled to report if they saw something out of the ordinary. And I believe there's also a consent form that parents sign at some point during the year. I'm not sure if it's in the handbook or Jeff, you have a confused look now.
Yeah, we sent out a letter to all parents indicating that the letter is still on our website, actually, that indicates, you know, you're basically, this is how we're going to be able to provide instruction with an option to opt out. Nobody took advantage of that. We had some questions, but I think when people realize, you know, what you see at home is like what we see of everybody else right now. It's a very tight camera shot, limited information. And if this is a most effective way for my child to engage in learning right now, we're going to do it. But the letter is on our website still.
Right. So I would encourage those who have concerns to review the letter. And secondly, regarding the new technology package that you were talking about, what was your plan for distribution? Is it like all at the high school? Is it are you planning for X amount in each school, or what was the plan for that?
Thanks for asking the question. It came up from a couple of folks on our COVID email address too. So the distribution plan was to have one at every grade level, K through 6 in each building, plus one on each team at the middle school. So one of the 7th grade, one of the 8th grade teams, plus a couple of world language classes at the middle school. And then at the high school level, 3 from each core content area: math, science, social studies, English, and 3 in world language, plus 2 more at the high school. So that and we would be working with principals and staff members to identify people appropriate teachers that could facilitate that.
So so that seems that to me that feels like it's workable, at least from middle school down ish, but with all of the I guess electives and stuff at the high school, I guess that would be very complicated.
Yeah, I think that's where we're looking at, Tony's point, and building on what you were saying and our attendance issue and hybrid, where we would probably like to pursue more installations of this. But I also, I'm being kind of judicious in the way that we roll it out. And I'd like to, get one in the building first, have more teachers, and as much as it's had universal endorsement to date, I'd like to have more people look at it before we pull the trigger on another $200,000 or something like that.
Right. And has the option been looked at to just, simple web cameras to do, like what I think what was it Screencastify or
Sure. Yeah.
the live synchronous that was starting to be done near the end of the year.
Yeah.
Live lectures and stuff. Has there been have you looked into that? Because that certainly wouldn't cost $3,200 if the teacher has, a $50 webcam and a decent mic, and everyone else has their laptops or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And again, we looked at this from 2 perspectives. One, we want to replicate the in-class experience at home to the greatest extent possible. And we didn't want to throw good money after bad kind of thing and just buy cheap speakers that we would hook onto a, and then at the end of COVID, we've got a whole lot of cheap speakers that we don't have anything to do with. So, yes, we could do it, through the Google Meet and try and do live, but I think it's going to be really hard for kids at home to be able to follow that without high quality audio. So we don't want to create a source of frustration, but we are, looking to see how we can best bridge it with outside of those 56 rooms.
Right, but I'm just saying from let's say if we had to scale quickly, we shut down in a matter of 4 days, you had to transition
Sure.
over. If we didn't have the opportunity to purchase another 56 cameras
installed
after that or whatever, can we still have the ability to at least do this basic,
Yeah.
we'll call it rudimentary.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and it's a great point too.
The challenge is, though, because we, my company last year, we made a significant investment. There's Zoom rooms. We essentially turned all our conference rooms and all our buildings into almost what this technology does. It's it's night and day difference between, webcam on a laptop versus something that, kind of follows you around and the clarity and all that. But it's also the software that helps make setting up the sessions easier and managing it easier for the teacher. So I'm sure worst case scenario, we can still roll out some of the bare bones web stuff. But I think when we get a chance to see this, I think the board understand why it's a more quality solution. But it's good to have both options in our back pocket.
So if I could just comment one last time. So it almost sounds like if we were to have to shut down or go to a hybrid model, that it almost sounds like the preference would be to have the kids not in school, but have the teachers be in school to use the technology to recreate the in-classroom experience? Or is that sort of the intention with this technology?
You could. And if I think it would depend on a variety of factors, I guess, at that point, if how many people can we have in a building, et cetera. And, what's the teacher's situation? Are they quarantined, not quarantined, whatever? But we would think that at the least teachers, we would hope, could have access to it if they choose, and if the circumstances present. But they could, at that point, probably do something very similar from home. I think what it makes it easier to do is if I'm a teacher who wants, and a lot of our teachers are animated, and do things in the room, and so you'd be able to hear them crystal clear. You'd be able to in the room, and I'll tell you, frankly, for me, one of the challenges I had for the last 3 months of the spring is I never left work. I was constantly at home working, and it's healthy to go to a place and work there and at least feel like there's a little bit of separation. Now, obviously, I'm at home working tonight, but I think it's healthy for our staff to have that option too.
Could I just add something to that? I was very impressed when you sent us the information on that equipment and the retrofitting, Jeff, because I can see how it's very forward thinking to start using this technology, because I can think of hundreds of reasons why some students might in the future, they have in the past, been confined to home for illnesses or other reasons. And this way in the future, even post-COVID, if there is going to be such a thing, which doesn't seem like it right now, but there probably will be a post-COVID. But we always have students who are homebound, and this provides a really good solution for them still being able to participate in school, which I think is fantastic just for that reason alone.
Sure. Absolutely.
Tim had his hand up 15 minutes ago.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, Jeff, I'm not sure if you touched on this at all. I could have missed it. Extracurriculars. So everything from high school sports, Dodd sports, down through, Cub Scouts and Brownies after school in the elementaries, after the day is over at the elementary schools. Do you have any thoughts on that at all at this point? Or is it's just not on your radar at all?
At this point, we would say that we're not going to allow other community groups to use the school as of today. Now, that may change. We don't want to hinder our ability to engage in disinfection after the school day, which is really the guiding factor in that decision. But again, that may change as we get closer, because I appreciate that our schools are the community facilities, and that many organizations rely upon our buildings for meetings like you're talking about, and gatherings that are important to the emotional well-being of our kids and the community. So we hope to be able to evolve to a place where we can permit that. But as of today, I would say we're not going to do that.
And what about like CIAC or band, anything like that?
Sure.
Any thoughts on it at this point?
Yeah, so that right there is a question that came in on the COVID line too. Like, what are we doing for band and sports?
Okay.
So the CIAC at this point, we are in a phase of athletics where kids can engage in conditioning in groups of about 10. So they can participate in weightlifting to become physically better prepared for the fall sports season. They have a goal, CIAC, Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, of opening athletics, to students in the fall. And we hope, for our kids' sake and our community's sake, that they can do so safely. The band, we are planning to start mid-August with additional health precautions in place, similar to what you see in the athletic domain. So we want to be able to offer the full experience to our kids of extracurricular options We may have to do some of that virtually. But again, you know, when it comes to cohorting, when people say, well, we really need to cohort high school students, and then they go play sports, you know, or in the mix with the band, it's really hard to do that. So, you know, we hope that kids can have access to those things that mean so much for so many of them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from the board on this? Any further communications from the public, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd love to just buzz through a bunch of questions that came in. I addressed this at the beginning, but why a virtual meeting? But we're talking about sending kids back to school. Well, again, this is July 14th. We're under executive orders, no more than 25 in a meeting. And, you know, hopefully by August, things are in better condition. Security versus ability to go outdoors. So when we talked today to our administrators, we talked about, you know, propping doors open to the exterior of the building. We will do that when it's supervised. So, you know, for example, I use the example of often I'll walk into Cheshire High at 7:20 in the morning, and our assistant principal, Dan Tartarelli, will dutifully be standing out in front of the building. In that case, we want doors open, propped open, because we don't want people constantly touching door handles. When the school day starts, we'll close those doors. Now, students being outside, we have students outside all the time now for recess and PE and things like that. We will have more students outside in a COVID environment because we want to try and get more fresh air, mask breaks, instruction outside whenever we can. It's not uncommon for elementary classes to go outside and read and do stuff like that now. It will be more commonplace in COVID. We're making a decision like what presents the greater risk today. Somebody entering the building or COVID, and we're going to have to, you know, weigh those options out. And more than likely, it'll be we'll take kids outside supervised, but we won't leave doors propped open unsupervised. The question about the brand of hand sanitizer because of recalls. Vin, can you touch upon the hand sanitizer ordering? I know there were questions about ingredients a couple of weeks back, and I know we're sensitive to that. But
sanitizer from Wave right now. This is one of the products that we have. These are the individual bottles. I don't have the brand of the hand sanitizer that's going to be used in the dispensing station available, but you know, we'll certainly keep checking any kind of recall lists. You know,
yeah.
That's really all I can offer at this point in time. With
well, I've got you here then. Can parents donate supplies like cleaning supplies? Was a question that came up.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, when you say donate cleaning supplies, are we talking about, you know, items that they're going to purchase to donate to the school or provide funding to make the purchase? You know, we're trying to be pretty meticulous about what type of sanitizing and disinfecting agents that we purchase. But what I would suggest, if a parent has a particular donation they want to make, to contact me, you know, by email, vmassiana@cheshire.k12ctus, and I'll take it up individually.
Thank you. Desk cleaning?
Well, cleaning, I guess there's a couple of points on that I would make. You know, one is that, you know, as part of the nightly cleaning, we anticipate, you know, cleaning and disinfecting desks during the day. You know, we are supplying the disinfecting wipes to all the classrooms, you know, so, you know, students and staff are going to basically be doing that wipe down if they need to do so. And again, that underscores the importance of, you know, not only wiping down, but, you know, hand sanitizing, washing hands. Those are all the things that we'll keep reinforcing, you know, throughout the school year, you know, for our students and our staff. It's just part of what everyone needs to do effectively. You know, I think what will be judicious about cleaning, but I think everyone that is in our buildings needs to do their own part to help out by using the product that we will make available.
Okay. There was another question related to donations about soliciting financial donations to pay for either supplies or technology. If somebody wanted to make a donation, Vin, that would be contact you as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Remote attendance. There was a question about remote attendance. Yes, teachers would be taking remote attendance for synchronous learning. Again, we're sensitive to absenteeism. It kind of like last spring, we were really focused on trying to make sure there was student engagement, even though we weren't able to count like how many heads were coming to the class like we typically do. But we really want to make sure there's student engagement overall, and that students are getting access to learning as much as possible. Traveling between high school classes is a question. To be honest with you, we don't have a perfect answer for that right now. We'd be looking at staggering schedules. Otherwise, it would be one directional hallways, kind of like the Stop and Shop aisles or whatever. You have to walk in a certain direction to get to class so that at least everybody's traveling in the same direction. But we are still working on that. If we go to a hybrid option and kids are split AM, PM kind of thing, or on different days, the question is, can we try and get siblings on the same day? And I would say absolutely, we would try and do that. Why don't we have a no mask option? The state and health guidance has been clear that we have to require masks. And I know Marlene loves to point out her favorite line from the 50-page document indicates that you have to wear a mask unless you're unconscious or unable in some other way. So they literally wrote, unless you're unconscious. I think it's pretty clear. A question from a teacher is, would board members engage in a day in the life experience if we go to when we start school? I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm just throwing that out there to you. Certainly, we welcome your participation in our schools anytime. This is a good question. This is such a heartwarming question for me from a fellow educator about what are we doing to support instructional consistency between teachers in buildings. Marlene, can you kind of touch upon some of the work we've been doing there?
Absolutely. So instructional consistency is always something that we strive for. It's one of the biggest challenges, not just in our district, but in others. And I think when you go to a remote environment, or we're in a time such as this, all of those holes really rise to the surface. And so I feel like it's almost a silver lining in this area, because now we can clearly see where those gaps may be. And I think we've seen the best work come out of those teams that are collaborating. So out of my office and out of our professional development, that will be a clear focus this year on consistency, both across buildings.
Thank you. If someone in my child's class is sick and my child has to be cohorted, will Cheshire provide daycare? My guess would be no, but I guess we can look at that. Who will teach the kids if a teacher can't come in for a particular reason? And I think, in order for us to provide the highest level of instruction possible, if the teacher is home and able, we would prefer that over a substitute in most cases. So we would prefer that the teacher engage remotely than to have just somebody thrown in the room. and hope that they're good enough. And I don't mean that in any sort of disrespect, but if it's a more extended period, then we want the people we originally hired for that job to be teaching our kids, because our teachers are second to none. If there's quarantining by cohort, I know I addressed this kind of a little while ago. Who would have to be quarantined if a student in the class gets sick? Does that mean everybody in the class plus everybody on the bus plus everybody on the hockey team or whatever? No. Each case as of today will be individually evaluated for who they came in closest contact with and who's at greatest risk, and that could be unique to each individual. For some kids, it's just the 20 kids that were in their elementary class. For others, it's those 20 kids plus the 6 kids in their neighborhood that they play with every day. So, it really changes by individual, and we're working with that with the local health directors on Monday. Another question I really appreciate about who's taking care of the cleaning staff. Our maintenance team has really evolved and is fantastic. And I'm meeting with their leadership next week to talk about, hey guys, what are your concerns? What are your questions? How do we make sure we support you? Like the same way I'm meeting with IAs, secretaries, teachers, administrators, to get feedback on that. So I had another question about N95 masks. Why can't we use those? I guess an N95 mask, the white ones would be permitted. Some come with the exterior vent. The problem with the exterior vent is some of those are not filtered, others are. And so we can't be evaluating that all the time. In order to ensure that all the masks provide the greatest prevention, we would only go with the non-filtered kind. I know that, perhaps it may be more comfortable, but until we can get to a place where we would purchase filtered N95s for everybody, we don't want to take that risk at this point in talking to our health professionals. So those are the ones that I think we could get through now. I mean, I am still getting other ones. I promised to reply to you guys that have sent more recent emails, but that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Jeff. Anna, did you have a comment a while ago, or is that an old?
I did. I don't know if it's relevant or not, or perhaps maybe a demonstration would set my mind at ease. But for the technology you're speaking of, could we get a demonstration, and does it have reverse capability? So as I'm thinking about it, maybe that doesn't make any sense, but you were saying that in order to keep the teacher teaching, hopefully if they're well enough, is there a way where the children or the students are sitting in the classroom and the teacher can teach using that technology, with their face appearing on a screen like the Wizard of Oz or something?
Yeah.
I would
Max Headroom for those of us that are old enough.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a thing.
Yeah, Andrew may not know Max Headroom, but anyway, yeah, that is a thing.
Don't let him fool you. He's not that young.
Yeah, he looks it. God bless him. So teachers can do that from home, and your face would be on the screen, and they probably would do it until they realize that your face is as big as a TV screen. That would intimidate all of us, I'm sure, but it is possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We don't have new business. We don't have old business. I do have a very quick chair update. I had contacted the board earlier today, and I'm going to ask. I'll speak with you, Jeff, tomorrow. But I'm going to ask Carol, I guess, this week to kind of poll the board members, see if we want to try going back to some form of in-person Board of Ed meetings. Not because we're being accused of being Chicken Little and not eating our own dog food and holding our own meetings in person in our school buildings, but we've held off for a number of reasons. COVID concerns, number one, but I know town council's trying it if they haven't already. I would somehow try to poll the board to see if we're able to do this I think we can. If we are able to resume in-person board meetings, I would suggest we try it in such a way that perhaps we hold one at a different school. I'm thinking the Dodd Cafeteria for one, Cheshire High School Auditorium, heck, maybe even Dodd Library, and we can space ourselves apart enough. Possibly even have a mixed hybrid approach where some of us are in person, some of us might be home on Google Meet. I know we're limited to 25 person max. I think with 13, 14, if we include Mike, that might leave 10 or 11 folks for the public to attend. But even for the public, they can still watch via YouTube Live and submit questions anyway. So I'll ask Carol to poll us this week, see what everybody's thoughts are. We'll definitely like to try it. And I think as we get closer to reopening, and as these protocols are put into place, and if classrooms are cleared out to make space, it might be a great way to show parents, if we're in these facilities, what they might look like and what this distancing might look like if we're doing it. So just consider that. Someone asked earlier if we're willing to be a day in the life of a student during this. Absolutely. I would also invite our elected representatives, State Department of Education, as well as Mr. Lamont, to join in with us and kind of see what the experience is going to look like, so we all know what's going on. But in all seriousness, we have a couple things happening. Probably not be unaware of. We actually are doing contract negotiations with two of our major collective bargaining units, the administrators union, and I believe the teachers union should be starting soon. So that will be happening the rest of the summer, heading into the new year. We don't have our upcoming meetings between now and end of August scheduled yet. So on that, Jeff, I wasn't talking about it now, but I guess next steps on this, I imagine we want to have more feedback, refine this plan a little bit more. Obviously, as you get more information from the state and health officials, when do you think we can have another meaningful meeting on the reopening? And would you like to see some more feedback, maybe via survey, before we have that next meeting to discuss the plans further? Do we have a ETA?
I'm thinking probably, in a couple of weeks. Again, things are continuing to evolve. Continued conversations with folks at the state level. Continued work with our health folks. So, I don't want to meet, particularly over the summer, to just give you more of the same.
Right.
I want there to be substantial changes, and I think 2 weeks would probably give us more time to be able to do that. I also know that the governor is planning on making some sort of related announcement on August 1st. So it may be helpful to shoot for a couple days after that too, as a deadline for us.
Yeah, I agree. We all appreciate the time you, Marlene, and team have taken tonight to answer questions. I know there's a lot more, but I certainly don't want to waste our time, your time, or the public's time, rehashing the same things if things are not evolving yet. So just being conscious of that. But the point is, we need to put up our 2020, 2021 board meeting schedule on our website soon. The first official meeting is start of school, which I think is the end of August or first of September. Between now and then, we will have more meetings. We don't have dates yet, as Jeff mentioned, but as soon as we have an idea, we'll post that so folks are, informed. Beyond that, I don't have any other updates. So that being said, there's nothing else on our agenda. Unless there's any closing statements from Jeff and team, I just want to not try to recap what happened tonight, but on behalf of the board, CPS, we thank everyone out there. Those of you watching, those of you that haven't been watching but have been engaged with us in some way, shape, or form, thank you for your patience. We all share your concerns. We all share your frustrations, and we mean that. We also have kids in the school system, so we share generally the same concerns you do. It is an evolving process, and as Jeff and Marlene mentioned earlier this evening, the options we're considering is what's pretty much mandated by the state right now. That will evolve. More information will be made available. This is not set in stone. The reopening team is still working, still evolving. Feedback is still welcome. So I would say please have patience, hang in there. And it was mentioned earlier this meeting, As parents, we have choices to make, and we have choices to make up until they're open in school, whether we decide to keep our kids home or let them go to school and hybrid model. So we're not locked into anything yet. We hopefully, by the middle of August, we can make those decisions with concrete data. But the point is, you have flexibility. But as you have questions, as you hear ideas, please send them our way. We'll certainly try to get back to you on that. So thank you again. This is not over by far, and we'll keep working at it. We'll get to the end game. So that being said, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move.
Second.
Catherine moves to adjourn. Adam seconds. All in favor? It is unanimous. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, team. Jeff, Marlene.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Jeff,
Mike.
Ben,
Always-
Marlene.
Everyone.
Bye.
Mike, before we, can I ask you how many viewers we had tonight, roughly?